Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about transit Jupiter making a square opposition or inconjunct aspect to natal Chiron. And thing about this is when you have transits that involve Jupiter, it can be about expanding horizons, enthusiasm, exuberance, optimism, hope, jocularity, joviality, truth, and veracity. And when you have the transit Jupiter basically making an adverse aspect to natal Chiron, what I'm talking about, I'm going to elaborate what I mean when I say basically adverse aspect. This is squares, oppositions, of course, in astrology are adverse and negative aspects, but the inconjunct aspect can be seen as neutral. But when you have a neutral aspect, it can have positive and negatives in it. And coupled with the fact that an inconjunct can require adjustments and transition. And the thing is, when you have that going on, that is something that can cause some tension, some exasperation. So collectively, basically, this is, I see it as an adverse aspect. Now, when you have transit Jupiter basically making an adverse aspect to one's natal Chiron, well, it may manifest in expanding horizons, going outside the box, enthusiasm, exuberance, optimism, hope, jocularity, joviality, truth, veracity. These things may conflict with physical and emotional wounds. It could be, when you have this transit, if you're trying to go outside the box, you're trying to expand your horizons, this could be a tough transit because you may be in the process of dealing with something, say of a physical nature where there might be some physical suffering. If your natal Chiron, say, is in Gemini, it could be something with carpal tunnel, or it might be some shoulder pain, or something with the arms, or it might be some kind of sprain, or sometimes it might even be a broken arm in some isolated cases. And these are it can be a tough transit for this reason. If it's in, sometimes it could be some psychological suffering that may be that might be conflicting with you trying to go outside the box, so to speak, and expand horizons. There may be, if natal Chiron is in Aries, it could be something to do with, maybe dealing with lack of, suffering connected with lack of being aggressive and assertive and having initiative and enterprise. It can also be, another way this transit, can manifest. This could be, you're talking about Chiron can be connected again with physical and emotional and anguish, and so it could even be private suffering you may be going through it. Especially, say for example, if you have like the natal Chiron in the 12th house. It could be something that you don't really want to come out. And 12th house is also about solitude, seclusion, isolation. It might be something where you're trying to deal with something privately, is that example, and it might be you really don't have really that that energy to go outside the box to enlarge upon your current interests. And also, too, given that Jupiter is connected with enthusiasm and exuberance, you might not have really that much exuberance and enthusiasm dealing with maybe something you may be inept in. Chiron could be connected with ineptitude. It could be something that you may actually lack or weakness, or it could be something that at least you perceive as a lack or some weakness at this time. And it might be something where you don't have really that positive energy, that exuberance and enthusiasm to deal with it. If you, let's say for example, if you have the natal Chiron in Cancer, it might be something with the home and the family, or maybe lacking some dedication or devotion in some cases, or protective energy. It can be something, if it's in Gemini, if natal Chiron is in Gemini, it could be, you might feel there's some lack of ability to process or assimilate information, to learn things, to actually be versatile, to diversify interests. It can be hold your own in a conversation. Now, the thing about this too is that Chiron can also be, connected. I mean, again, physical and emotional wounds. It can be connected with trauma. It can be dealing, with something of a strong physical nature. If there was some cases, Chiron can manifest an abuse. It might be a situation, where you're having a hard time expressing, humor or being jocular or happy because you might be dealing with some kind of trauma. There might be some abusive situation in some cases. If the natal Chiron is in the fourth house, it could be a abusive situation in the home and family. In the seventh house, it might be with a significant other, a relationship, or maybe somebody that might be an open adversary or enemy. Say if it's you have the natal Chiron in Leo in the seventh house, it could be some kind of bully in some cases. It could be an open enemy. Now, another thing too is that Chiron can be associated with our deepest wound. And it might be where you might not have, the optimism to really take care of it at this time. I have my natal Chiron in Aries in my 12th house in my natal chart. And a lot of, and I would say, the deepest wound, one interpretation of that for me is about, lacking the initiative and enterprise, the aggression, to work through, things that are, limitations, restrictions, fears, inhibitions in my life. And also the 12th house is the self-undoing. Sometimes it may have also been, in my case, acrimonious, energy, fights that didn't need to happen might have been my own self-undoing. And if I have transit Jupiter making an adverse aspect to that natal Chiron, it might be a time where I just don't feel, very optimistic about being able to cope or to handle that energy, to deal with that, to heal those wounds. The thing is, too, Chiron can also be connected with diminished self-esteem or self-worth. Now, when this transit happens, it can be, where you don't have, the positive energy to really deal with that. It might be maybe there's some matters that are Jupiter related, such as publishing or traveling abroad, higher education, might be tied in, to you not being able to cope, to deal with issues with lowered self-esteem. Or it might be that maybe there might be something with the Jupiter and things that might be causing that or exacerbating a depleted self-worth or self-esteem. If Jupiter is connected with higher education and college. Let's say, for example, if some of you don't have, higher education, you're not college educated, you have this transit, something like that might make you, might really, exacerbate, issues with self-worth and self-esteem, as an example. Or maybe the lack of ability to expand horizons or go outside the box is another example. Now, another thing too is that Chiron is also, it's the wounded healer, so it's also about healing and helping others in ways that we have difficulty in helping ourselves. So you might not even have, the exuberance, the enthusiasm to help and heal others at this time, or even your own suffering and wounds at this point in time in your life. Now, if you have, say the natal Chiron is in Taurus, it could be things of a monetary nature, or maybe issues with, lack of persistence or being able to persevere in certain instances. Chiron is connected, with weakness as well, which of course is tied into what I was stating for. Ineptitude, it's where we at least would feel we might have, we're inept or we have some weakness in our lives, and we might not feel very positive in terms of getting, working through it right now. We're dealing with it. The natal Chiron is in Leo as an example. It could be matters connected with gregariousness or extroversion, or simply getting attention or the accolades or recognition for things that we may have done or doing. So anyway, hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that, I'm back. But anyway, well, another way this may transit may manifest, it might be, again, reiterating what I said previously, could be difficulty in finding the enthusiasm or exuberance to help and heal others. Say if the natal Chiron is in Aries in the 7th house as an example, it could be dealing with contentious or violent situation. You might have a friend that's dealing with a contentious or violent situation with a significant other or marriage partner, as an example. Now, adverse transits of Jupiter can often involve over-optimism as well. Some cases, this transit may be expressed in over-optimism in matters with trauma, trying to deal with it or take care of it. It could be a physical injury. It could be something where maybe you're anxious about a physical injury or something debilitating going away sooner than maybe it will. It can be, for example, say if Chiron, is in Gemini, as an example. It could be something with the arms, the hands, the nerves. It could be something with some carpal tunnel. I don't know if that carpal tunnel even ever goes away, but if it's something that doesn't go away, maybe there's something where one may be overly optimistic about it getting better or being able to work through it, with less suffering or what have you. Now, another thing too is that this can also be, and also if the Chiron is in Gemini, it could be more, it could also be, emotional suffering, maybe from dealing with, something, for example, with plagiarism or theft as some examples, and it might be, or maybe you're over optimistic in dealing with that. So, like, say if you're trying to bring somebody to court or have somebody arrested or apprehended as a result of that. Another thing, too, is that there may be philosophical differences over, an ineptitude or some weakness you may have. Say, if Chiron is in, natal Chiron is in Aquarius, as an example, it might be over, what the belief is over uniqueness and being different. And, it could be where somebody might say, well, I think you're unique in this way because of this, but you might still feel there's some lack in it for whatever reason. And even Aquarius can be connected with friendships and innovation, and it might be some issues that are philosophical, that you might have some philosophical difference with somebody over those subjects as well. And another thing too is that it might be harder to see the truth, and again, your depleted self-worth. If say if the natal Chiron is in Pisces in the 11th house, as an example, it might have something to do with betrayal or dealing with duplicity, which is Pisces, with friendships or acquaintances, which of course is the 11th house. Some cases too, physically, again, if there's any issues that are Jupiter related, such as with the sciatic nerve, the liver, the hip, the pancreas, it might be, adversely affecting something else in the physical body, such as something, say if the natal Chiron is in Taurus, it could be something like with the esophagus, as an example, such as the liver doing something with that, and there is something, disease, I forget what it is called, but it is associated with that when the, liver disease can cause an issue with the esophagus region. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.